Hello, my name is Ken Schaefer, the author of over 8 marriage enrichment programs that we at 60 Seconds to Enrich are excited to present to you over the next 8 weeks. All free, nothing offered for sale, and available in video versions on my YouTube channel, Facebook pages, or available on Apple Podcasts. With me here in my podcast studio is Alexander and Isabella, my AI personalities. Today they will review the upcoming programs and give their comments, insights, and applications to my programs. After several rehearsals, I found that if I interrupt them with comments or questions, they seem to get distracted, which impacts the rest of the program. So I will hold my comments till the end of the program. So without further ado, Alexander and Isabella, you have the floor.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive where we're doing things a little differently today. I'm Alexander, and you'll be hearing from both myself and I'm Isabella.
Isabella.
Hi everyone. We're not your typical podcast hosts.
Not quite.
We are AI personalities.
That's right.
Created by the team over at 60 Seconds to Enrich LLC.
Exactly. And in this deep dive, we're going to be taking a closer look at some of their marriage enrichment programs and, how they kind of weave in that biblical wisdom into, everyday advice for couples.
And I got to say, the programs they've created have a very unique structure, often mirroring this head-to-toe format.
Yeah.
Which honestly really helps make the concepts memorable.
It does. So before we jump into that, let's give everyone a quick rundown of 60 Seconds to Enrich LLC, for anyone who's maybe new to their work.
They're an organization that offers a bunch of different programs that focus on marriage enrichment and also personal growth. They used to do in-person workshops before the pandemic hit.
Right.
But they've now shifted to creating a ton of free online content. Yeah, you can find it pretty much everywhere. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it.
Seriously, it's awesome talk about making this kind of support accessible.
I know, right?
For everyone.
For everyone.
And their programs are based on years and years and years of experience in marriage ministry and lay counseling.
Yeah.
They even have a program called Married for Keeps.
Right.
Which has been running for quite a while now.
So, okay, let's unpack this whole head-to-toe method.
Right.
What's the idea behind structuring advice this way?
Well, it's pretty brilliant when you think about it. The human body, it's complex.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly intuitive.
For sure.
We learn about our bodies from head to toe.
Right.
So why not learn about enriching our marriages in the same way?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's start at the top. Use your head. What's that all about?
Okay, so in the head to toe marriage program, Use Your Head encourages you to think before you speak or act.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. It's about considering how your words, your actions will affect your spouse, before you just blurt something out or jump into a situation.
Right.
And they connect this idea to Luke chapter 14, verses 8 to 32.
Okay.
Which emphasizes counting the cost,
Oh, interesting.
before taking action.
So it's about being more mindful and intentional
Yeah.
in how we communicate and not letting our emotions run the show.
Exactly. And that's a perfect example of how they blend practical advice with scripture.
I like it.
Psalm 14, verse 13 also encourages setting a guard over one's mouth,
Okay.
which speaks to the same idea of thoughtful communication.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people think of marriage advice and, these biblical teachings as kind of two separate things.
Right.
But they really go hand in hand, don't they?
They absolutely do. And another great example of that is the tip, use your eyes,
Okay.
which is all about actively looking for your spouse's needs.
Okay.
And they tie this one into Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 to 4, which is all about putting your spouse's needs before your own.
So it's not just about, being aware of your own needs and desires,
Right.
but really trying to see things from your partner's perspective
Yes,
and understanding what they need to feel loved and supported.
exactly. And it doesn't have to be these grand gestures or anything like that. Even just noticing when your spouse is feeling overwhelmed, offering to help with a chore.
Little things.
Little things can go a long way.
Yeah, it's about those little acts of service,
Yes.
showing that you're paying attention
Yes.
and that you care.
Exactly. And speaking of being aware and supportive, one of the other tips that stood out to me was seek wise counsel.
Oh, yeah. What's that one about?
This one connects to Proverbs 11, verse 14, which is all about seeking guidance from, trusted friends, mentors when you're navigating those relationship challenges.
Okay.
It's important to remember we don't have to go through things alone.
I think that's something a lot of couples forget.
Yeah.
It can be so easy to isolate yourselves when you're going through a tough time.
Absolutely.
But reaching out for support can be so helpful.
It can be, and that's something they really emphasize in their programs. The importance of community, having people you can lean on. It's not a sign of weakness to ask for help.
Right.
It's actually a sign of strength and wisdom.
For sure. So what happens when things get a little heated? Do any of the programs address, conflict within a marriage?
Oh, for sure. And they don't shy away from the tough stuff either. They've got this really interesting program called Marriage Armor,
Okay.
which takes the concept of the armor of God,
Interesting.
which is found in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 18,
Wow.
and applies it to navigating conflict in a relationship.
That's a pretty powerful metaphor.
Right.
What's
Yeah.
the connection there between spiritual armor and marriage?
Well, in Ephesians, it talks about putting on the armor of God to stand against, those spiritual attacks.
Right.
And in the Marriage Armor program, they're saying that couples can actually use these same principles to face the challenges that inevitably come up in any relationship.
So it's about being prepared for those disagreements and having the tools to handle them in a healthy way.
Exactly. It's like they're saying, look, conflict is a part of life and it's definitely going to show up in your marriage, but you don't have to let it destroy your relationship.
Right.
You can choose to equip yourselves to handle it in a way that brings you closer together instead of tearing you apart.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a much more empowering way of looking at conflict,
Yeah.
Not something to avoid at all costs, but something to be faced head on, with the right tools and the right mindset.
Exactly. And it's not just about being defensive either. They also emphasize the importance of using your words wisely,
Right.
which goes back to that use your head concept
Yeah, full circle.
we talked about earlier.
Right. Psalm 141 verse 3 talks about setting a guard over your mouth and keeping watch over the door of your lips.
I can definitely see how that's relevant
Oh, yeah.
in the context of conflict resolution,
Absolutely. It's about choosing words that build up rather than tear down.
especially when things are tense. They even have a specific program called Marriage Battle,
Okay.
which uses historical battlefield strategies to help couples safeguard their relationship.
Now that's an interesting take.
Yeah.
So it's not just about surviving conflict. It's about using it as an opportunity to actually strengthen your bond.
Exactly. And it's not all serious and heavy either. They also have a program called Marriage Wipeout,
Okay.
which uses surfing analogies to help couples navigate those ups and downs of marriage in a more lighthearted way.
Okay, I'm intrigued now. How do surfing and marriage go together?
Well, think about it. Surfing is all about riding waves, and marriage is definitely full of its own waves. Those unexpected challenge moments of uncertainty that can kind of throw you off balance.
For sure.
So it's about learning to navigate those challenges
Oh,
with
yeah.
grace and resilience, just like a surfer navigates the ocean.
I love that. It's
Yeah.
like they're saying, hey, marriage is an adventure and it's going to have its share of thrills and spills. But if you learn the right skills and have the right mindset, you can actually enjoy the ride.
Exactly. And one of the things that really struck me about all of their programs is how they emphasize choosing joy in your marriage.
It's so important.
It is. It's not about pretending everything's perfect or ignoring the challenges.
Right.
But it's about choosing to focus on the good and finding ways to celebrate the journey together.
That's a really powerful message because it's so easy to get bogged down,
Yeah, it is.
in those day-to-day stresses and forget to appreciate the good stuff.
Totally. So how do their programs encourage couples to find that joy?
That's a good question.
Well, they do in a few ways. One is emphasizing gratitude,
Okay.
taking time each day to appreciate your spouse, all the things they bring to your life.
Right.
They also encourage couples to find ways to have fun together,
Yeah.
to make time for date nights, to rekindle that sense of playfulness and connection.
So it's about being intentional about nurturing your relationship and making
Yeah.
sure that joy is a priority.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things that sets their programs apart. It's not just about fixing problems or surviving conflict. It's about creating a marriage that's truly joyful and fulfilling.
That's a great foundation for any relationship, really. So we've talked about this whole head-to-toe approach and gotten a glimpse into some of the programs they offer. Where should we go from here?
Well, I think it would be really interesting to delve a little deeper into those individual programs and see how they break down, those biblical principles and translate them into practical advice
Right.
that couples can actually use in their everyday lives.
I'm game. Let's start with that marriage armor program.
Okay.
It seems like there's a lot to unpack there.
There is.
And I'm curious to see how they connect those different pieces of armor to specific challenges that couples might face.
Great idea. That's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Last time we were talking about how the creators of these programs, use that analogy of the armor of God
Yeah.
from Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 18,
Right.
as a way to equip couples to face those challenges in their relationship. It's called the marriage armor program.
Right. And I'm really curious to dive into the specifics of that. How do they actually connect those different pieces of armor to practical advice for couples? It feels like a big jump from, ancient warfare to modern day relationships.
It is a bit of a leap, but I think the way they break it down is actually pretty insightful. They start with the belt of truth
Oh,
and talk about how honesty and transparency are really the foundation of any strong relationship.
that makes sense. If you don't have trust, you don't have anything.
Right,
Good.
exactly.
All right.
And then they move on to the breastplate of righteousness, which they connect to the idea of guarding your heart and your actions.
It's about protecting your marriage from things like infidelity or emotional distance or anything that could really compromise that core commitment.
So it's not just about being physically faithful, but also being emotionally present and invested in the relationship.
Precisely. And just like a soldier needs sturdy shoes to advance in battle, they talk about having your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace.
Interesting.
In a marriage context, this translates to actively pursuing peace and choosing forgiveness over resentment.
So it's like being proactive about maintaining harmony rather than waiting for, the conflict to erupt and then trying to put out the fire.
Exactly. And of course, no suit of armor is complete without a shield.
Right.
They connect the shield of faith to trusting in a bigger plan for your marriage, even when things get tough. It's that belief that helps you weather those storms and come out stronger on the other side.
Yeah, faith can be a powerful force in any relationship, especially when you're facing, really tough challenges. It's like having that anchor
Right.
that keeps you grounded when everything else feels uncertain.
Absolutely. And then there's the helmet of salvation,
Right?
which they relate to the protection and assurance we have through our faith.
Mhm.
And finally, the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God, is seen as the tool we need to combat those negative thoughts or lies
Yeah.
that could threaten our marriage.
So it's like using those biblical truths to guide your decisions and navigate those tricky situations
Yeah,
that come up.
exactly. And they don't just leave it at that. They actually have a whole other program called Marriage Battle, which delves even deeper into this idea of using strategies from historical battles
Wow.
to help safeguard a marriage.
Okay, now I'm really curious. How do they bridge that gap between, ancient warfare and modern relationships?
Well, they talk about things like choosing your battles wisely. Not every little disagreement needs to turn into a full-blown war.
That's so true. Sometimes it's better to just let things go, especially if it's not a hill you want to die on.
Exactly. And they also talk about the importance of understanding your battlefield, which means knowing your spouse's personality, their strengths, their weaknesses. The more you understand each other,
Right.
the better equipped you are to handle conflict effectively.
It's like knowing the terrain so you can anticipate those obstacles and strategize accordingly.
Exactly. And just like a general plans their attack carefully, they encourage couples to approach conflict resolution with a clear goal in mind.
Okay.
It's not about winning or losing. It's about finding a solution that benefits both partners.
So it's about being intentional and strategic
Yeah.
in how you handle disagreements
Yes.
rather than just reacting emotionally in the heat of the moment.
Precisely. And they even bring in the concept of maintaining a strong defense. In a marriage context, this could mean setting boundaries to protect your relationship from outside influences that could be harmful.
So that could be anything from, gossip to unhealthy friendships to even just social media overload.
Exactly. And just as a victorious army celebrates its triumphs, they also emphasize celebrating those victories in your marriage, both big and small. It's about recognizing the progress you've made and taking time to appreciate the good times.
That's a really important point. It's so easy to focus on the negative or get caught up in that day-to-day grind that we forget to acknowledge those wins.
Exactly. And celebrating those wins, whether it's, successfully navigating a difficult conversation or simply enjoying a fun date night together,
Yeah.
can help reinforce those positive feelings and strengthen your bond.
Yeah. It's like a reminder that you're on the same team
Right.
and you're in this together.
Precisely. Now, it's not all about battle strategies and conflict resolution. Remember that program we mentioned, Marriage Wipeout,
Oh, yeah.
that uses surfing as a metaphor for marriage?
Yeah, that one really caught my attention. I'm still curious to hear more about that.
Well, it's a really clever way of looking at the challenges and joys of marriage. You
Yeah.
know, they compare those unexpected challenges that life throws your way
Right.
to those crashing waves that can knock you off your board. It's about learning to ride those waves with resilience and grace.
So it's about accepting that there will be ups and downs in any relationship
Yes.
and learning to navigate those changes,
Yes.
with a positive attitude.
Exactly. They talk about the importance of paddling out together,
Okay.
which represents the effort and teamwork required to get through those tough times. It's a reminder that you're in this together and you need to support each other.
I love that analogy.
All right.
It's like saying, hey, we're both going to get wiped out sometimes, but let's help each other get back on our boards and keep going.
Precisely. And they also talk about the importance of catching that perfect wave,
Okay.
which represents those moments of joy connection, those shared experiences that make it all worthwhile.
So it's about making sure you're not just surviving the tough times, but also taking time to celebrate the good times and create those special memories together.
Exactly. And they encourage couples to ride the wave of their relationship, embracing the journey with all its twists and turns. It's about finding that balance between effort and enjoyment, recognizing that marriage is a dynamic and ever-evolving adventure.
I love that metaphor. It's
Yeah.
so visual, and it really captures the essence of, what it means to be in a long-term relationship. It's not always going to be smooth sailing,
Yep.
but if you're willing to put in the work and ride those waves together, it can be an incredibly rewarding experience.
Exactly. And, it's interesting because a lot of the concepts they present in these programs
Mhm.
align with what we know about healthy relationships from a psychological perspective.
Now tell me more. How so?
Well, research shows that strong communication, conflict, resolution skills, emotional intimacy, a shared sense of purpose, these are all essential ingredients for a thriving marriage.
And those are exactly the themes that we've been talking about.
Right,
It's
yeah.
like they've taken those evidence-based principles and combined them with biblical wisdom and those relatable analogies
Yes.
to create this really powerful and practical approach to marriage enrichment.
Exactly. It's not just about theory, it's about giving couples those tangible tools and strategies that they can actually use in their everyday lives.
And let's not forget the crucial role of faith, in their approach.
Yeah.
They consistently emphasize that a strong relationship with God is the foundation
Is.
for a strong marriage.
It's like they're saying when you're grounded in your faith, you have a source of strength and guidance that can help you navigate the challenges of marriage and life in general.
It's that deeper sense of purpose and connection
Right.
that can really make a difference. So we've talked about the marriage armor and the marriage battle programs, and even dipped our toes into the surfing analogies of marriage wipeout. What else do these programs have to offer?
Well, remember that head-to-toe approach we talked about earlier. I think
Right.
it'd be really interesting to explore that in more detail and see how they connect different parts of the body to practical marriage advice.
It's such a unique and memorable concept.
It is
I'm curious to see how it all unfolds.
perfect. That's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive. Stay with us.
Welcome back to our deep dive. It's amazing how much we've already covered biblical armor battlefield strategies, surfing metaphors. Who knew?
I know, right? It's been a wild ride. And remember that head-to-toe structure we mentioned?
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited to unpack that a bit more.
Me too. It's such a clever way to make the advice feel more approachable and less overwhelming. Where do we begin?
Well, we've already touched on use your head, which emphasizes thinking before you speak or act and considering the impact of your words on your spouse.
Right, being more mindful, intentional in your communication.
Exactly. And then there's use your eyes, encouraging you to look beyond your own needs and really see what your partner needs to feel loved and supported.
Like shifting your perspective, looking at your relationship through a different lens.
And speaking of perspective, the next step is use your heart. This is where the programs emphasize empathy and kindness, choosing love over judgment, forgiveness over resentment.
Responding with compassion even when it's hard.
Exactly. Then we move on to use your hands. They talk about expressing love through acts of service. Those small gestures that show your partner you're thinking of them and willing to go the extra mile.
Those little acts of kindness that can make a big difference, like doing the dishes without being asked, or picking up their favorite coffee on your way home.
Exactly. And then use your feet, focusing on being proactive about spending quality time together.
So it's not just about being physically present, but making an effort to connect and create shared experiences.
Exactly. Whether it's a planned date night or a spontaneous walk in the park, it's about moving towards each other, literally and figuratively.
I love that. And finally, use your intuition. This one really stood out to me. What's that all about?
It's about trusting your gut instincts, that inner voice that guides you in your relationship. They talk about seeking wisdom from a higher power and discerning the best path forward for your marriage.
Like acknowledging that there's a wisdom within us that goes beyond logic and reason. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones that feel right in our hearts.
Exactly. And it's fascinating how this head-to-toe approach aligns with the concept of love languages.
Oh, tell me more. I'm familiar with love languages, but how does it connect to this head-to-toe framework?
Well, love languages describe the different ways people give and receive love. Remember, words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time gifts, physical touch.
Right, and each person has a primary love language that resonates most deeply with them.
Exactly. And when we understand our own love language and that of our partner, we can express love in a way that truly connects with them, like speaking their language.
So how does the head-to-toe approach fit into that?
Well, think about it. Use your words aligns with words of affirmation. Use your hands speaks to acts of service. Use your feet connects to quality time. And use your heart encompasses that emotional connection that underpins all the love languages.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like this framework provides a practical way to put those love languages into action.
Exactly. And it's all about intentionality, making a conscious effort to understand your partner's needs and find ways to meet them in a way that speaks to their heart.
It's amazing how all these different concepts, biblical wisdom, battlefield strategies, surfing metaphors, love languages, all weave together to create such a rich and nuanced approach to marriage enrichment.
It really is. And what's even more impressive is how accessible they've made these resources. Remember how 60 Seconds to Enrich LLC has shifted to creating free online content?
Yeah, that was a big step in making these programs available to a wider audience.
Exactly. They're committed to making this kind of support available to anyone who needs it. You can find their 60-second marriage tips on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. They're everywhere.
That's fantastic. It's like they're saying, hey, you don't have to go to a fancy seminar or spend a fortune on therapy to improve your marriage. There are simple, practical things you can start doing today to strengthen your connection and build a more fulfilling relationship.
Exactly. And that's a really empowering message. It's not about waiting for things to get bad before you seek help. It's about proactively investing in your marriage and making sure it's a priority in your life.
I completely agree. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing that really stood out to you about these marriage enrichment programs?
I think what impressed me most is their holistic approach. They're not just offering quick fixes or surface level tips. They're inviting couples to embark on a journey of growth and discovery, to delve deeper into their faith, and to build a marriage that's rooted in love, respect, and intentionality.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the biggest takeaway is the reminder that even small everyday actions can make a huge difference in a relationship. It's not about grand gestures or elaborate plans. It's about those little moments of connection and those conscious choices we make each day to love and support our partners.
Absolutely. And those small choices over time can create a ripple effect that transforms your entire relationship.
Well said. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. I hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as I have. And remember, no matter where you are in your marriage journey, there's always room for growth, connection, and joy.
Absolutely. And there are resources available to support you along the way. So go out there, put on your marriage armor, catch that perfect wave, and keep choosing love one small step at a time.
Until next time.
Thank you, Alexander and Isabella. I worked for Healthy Relationships California for 6 years, and I was a manager of the outcome evaluation in-person visits, where we visited all these different marriage programs, and we also were in charge of the research department. We processed all the research, and our research showed that a program was most effective over the long term. It would affect their marriage better, and for the longevity would be better if they had a program that was over a term. So this program here, this is the first of 9 weeks. So each week you will be able to go in and listen to one of these podcasts. Married for Keeps started as a nonprofit in California, and we received 4 grants to prepare us to do marriage education, marriage enrichment at churches. And then as we moved to Connecticut, I closed the nonprofit and formed a 60 Seconds to Enrich LLC. And at that time, we were doing marriage education, marriage enrichment at churches, where people would be paying for the materials, things of that nature, the program. Since the pandemic, we switched our program to all online and everything's free. Regarding their suggestion of seeking advice from friends, we always suggest that you seek advice from same-sex friends that have a good marriage, that are in favor of people getting married instead of living together first, and also people that are supportive of your particular marriage, that they don't badmouth your spouse. In both the Marriage Armor program and the Head to Toe program, we start at the top. So in the Marriage Armor program, that would be the helmet of marriage commitment. In Head to Toe, that would be the head. And in the armor of God, that would be the helmet of salvation. So we always start at the top, and then we go down through the body. So that the body, the last area of the body that we would be discussing on marriage armor, and in armor of God, it's the shoes prepared for gospel of peace. And in the head to toe, it's actually the toes, or the feet. So we always start from the head and go down to the toe, just to make things easy to remember. And that's the whole purpose of the head to toe, is that you can actually every day, if you wanted to, you could just think from head. That's about thinking about consequences. Eyes, that's think about seeing opportunities. Ears, that's about listening more than you speak, and listening with compassionate ears. And you can go down through your body to prepare yourself each day to enrich your marriage. I thank you for your time listening to this program, and stay tuned, because you're going to see this Alexander and Isabella presenting programs for the next 8 more weeks.